Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Info Tap. I'm glad you made it. Today I wanted to talk to you about the fire of 1973 and all of the military records that were lost and how difficult it has been for veterans and survivors to file for benefits due to lack of evidence because it all went up in smoke. Now, many of you may not know about it because you weren't affected by it. And those that are affected by it understand the major issues that have resulted due to it. Now, what I'm hoping for in this video is that information will get into the hands of veterans who may have lost their records in the file, and they'll read through the comments below and hear from other veterans or survivors on how they were able to reassemble some of their evidence for benefits from the VA. I mean, if you didn't have a copy of your DD-214 and it got burned in the fire, what are you going to do, right? If you had medical evidence about some sort of injury and it got burned up in the fire and your doctor's no longer alive and hasn't been in practice anyway for the last 30 years, well, what do? So I'm going to jump into this, give you a little bit of overview, and then read also some information from the VA on basically reconstructing your file and some tips on what you could do. So hit the thumbs up for me, subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. Helps to push this information again into the hands of those that need it. Imagine for one moment if your records were gone, and this might be a way for you to figure out a way to file some sort of a claim through the comments below and whatever other information we can get out here. So with that, let's jump into it. The 1973 fire, National Personnel Records Center. On July 12th, 1973, a disastrous fire at the National Personnel Records Center, NPRC, destroyed approximately 16 to 18 million official military personnel files. The records affected branch was for Army personnel discharged between November 1st, 1912 and or through January 1st, 1960. Estimated loss 80%. Huge. Air Force personnel discharged from September 25th, 1947 to January 1st, 1964, with names alphabetically after Hubbard James E. 75% estimated loss. So those are really big numbers, right? So it says here, no duplicate copies of the records were ever maintained, nor were microfilm copies produced. Neither were any indexes created prior to the fire. In addition, millions of documents had been lent to the Department of Veterans Affairs before the fire occurred. Therefore, a complete listing of the records that were lost is not available. However, in the years following the fire, the NPRC collected numerous series of records referred to as auxiliary records that are used to reconstruct basic service information. That is very important. The NPRC collected numerous series of records referred to as auxiliary records that are used to reconstruct basic service information. Let's see here. The fire. Shortly after midnight on July 12, 1973, a fire was reported at the NPRC's Military Personnel Records Building at 9700 Page Boulevard in St. Louis, Missouri. Firefighters arrived at the scene only 4 minutes and 20 seconds after the first alarm sounded and entered the building. While they were able to reach the burning 6th floor, the heat and smoke forced the firefighters to withdraw at 3:15 a.m. In order to combat and contain the flames, firefighters were forced to pour great quantities of water onto the exterior of the building and outside through broken windows. The fire burned out of control for 22 hours. It took 2 days before firefighters were able to re-enter the building. The blaze was so intense that local overland residents had to remain indoors due to heavy smoke. It was not until July 16th, nearly 4.5 days after the first reports, that the local fire department called the fire officially out. During the long ordeal, firefighters faced several problems due to insufficient water pressure, exacerbating the situation. One of the department's pumper trucks broke down after 40 hours of continuous operation. Numerous times the fire threatened to spread down to other floors, but firefighters were successful in halting its advance. In all, it took the participation of 42 fire districts to combat the disastrous blaze. Due to the extensive damages, investigators were never able to determine the source of the fire. Wow. The aftermath. The National Archives, The aftermath. The National Archives focused its immediate attention on salvaging as much as possible as quickly, resuming operations at the Page facility. Even before the final flames were out, staff at NPRC had begun work toward these efforts. All requests and records shipments from other government agencies were temporarily halted, and certain vital records were removed from the burning building for safekeeping. These included NPRC's operating records, a computer index of major portions of NPRC's holdings, and more than 100,000 reels of morning reports for the Army 1912 through 1959 and Air Force 1947 through 59. The latter proved especially important in the days following, as NPRC's officials determined that the fire damage had been worse among the Army and Air Force records for this same time period. As such, on July 23, 1973, the government issued a Federal Property Management Regulations Bulletin that halted federal agencies from disposing of records that might be useful in documenting military service. Such records have proved vital in efforts to reconstruct basic service information for requesters, you, the veteran, or surviving spouse, or what have you. On July 23rd, the NPRC awarded a construction contract to clear and remove the remains of the ruined 6th floor. The same day, employees previously on administrative leave returned to work to assist in the recovery efforts and resume reference services. The removal and salvage of water and fire damaged records from the building was the most important priority, and such efforts were overseen by a specially appointed project manager. Their work led to the recovery of approximately 6.5 million burned and water damaged records. Following the fire, the most immediate concern in the center revolved around water. In order to combat the blaze, firefighters had been forced to pour millions of gallons of water into the building to stop sporadic rekindling of the fire. Firefighters continued spraying water on the building until late July. In addition, broken water lines continued to flood the building until they could be capped. Water damage was heaviest on the 5th floor, but was spread throughout the building. Standing water combined with the high temperatures and humidity of the typical St. Louis summer created a situation ripe for mold growth. The paper is highly susceptible to mold. Officials sprayed throughout the building to control any outbreak of the mold. Controlling the spread of mold was once a concern, but so too was the issue of how to dry the millions of water-soaked records. Initially, NPRC staffers shipped these water-damaged records in plastic milk crates to temporary facilities at the Civilian Records Center in Winnebago, where hastily constructed drying racks had been assembled from spare shelving. When it was discovered that McDonnell Douglas Aircraft Corporation in St. Louis had a vacuum drying facility, the NPRC diverted its water-damaged records there for treatment. The vacuum dry process took place in a chamber that had previously been used to simulate temperatures and pressure conditions for the Mercury and Gemini space missions. The chamber was large enough to accommodate approximately 2,000 plastic milk cartons of water and fire-damaged records. Once inside, the McDonnell Douglas technicians lowered the air in the chamber to the freezing point and then filled the room with hot, dry ice, which squeezed out the water molecules. For each chamber load, they were able to extract approximately 8 pounds of water per container. Wow. The equivalent of nearly 8 total tons of water for each session. In addition to utilizing 2 more supplemental drying chambers at McDonnell Douglas, the NPRC also sent records to National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA facility in Ohio for drying. So moving on, it's almost done here. It's just important to get some of this information for those that really need it. It's nice to get the backstory. Towards Reconstruction. As part of the Reconstruction effort, the NPRC established a B registry file or burned file to index the 6.5 million recovered records. So too, the NPRC established a separate temperature-controlled B file area to protect and safeguard the damaged records. Later in July 1974, the NPRC established the R registry for reconstructed file to further assist with the reconstruction effort. Since then, staffers have placed all newly constructed records into the R registry file and stored them in an area separate from the B or burned files. In the months following the fire, the NPRC initiated several new records recovery and reconstruction efforts, including the establishment of a new branch to deal with the damaged records issue. As many military personnel records had been partially or completely destroyed by the fire, the new branch's central mission was to reconstruct records for those requesting service information from the NPRC. While some staffers sought to recover such information from documents and alternate sources outside of the NPRC, others searched through the center's organizational files for records to supplement the destroyed records or files. These alternate sources have played a vital role in NPRC's efforts to reconstruct service files. Some of the more important records used by the NPRC to supplement damaged files include Veterans Administration claims files, individual state records, multiple name pay vouchers from the Adjutant General's Office, Selective Service System records, pay records from the Government Accounting Office, as well as medical records from military hospitals, entrance and separation x-rays, and organizational records. Many work hours were spent making these sources usable. Efforts include the transfer of records to NPRC screening projects and securing access to VA computer records. In terms of loss to the cultural heritage of our nation, the 1973 NPRC fire was an unparalleled disaster. In the aftermath of the blaze, recovery and construction effort took place at an unprecedented level. Thanks to such recovery efforts and the use of alternate sources to reconstruct files, today's NPRC is able to continue its primary mission of serving our country's military and civilian servants. And then there's a link there that says you can learn more about Preservation Laboratory and so forth. So I know that was a lot, but it gives a good backdrop. I'm going to now transition over to the VA's website regarding essentially how to reconstruct your information for your claim, and wanted to share with you what the VA says here. And the VA, and again, if you're still watching, chances are you were affected or you have a family member affected by the fire. So my heart goes out to you because I know it's not a smooth process. So if you're still watching and you've went through the process and you found some tips or tricks, please share that in the comments, because others who are trying to figure this out may find it useful. So now I'm on the VA's website, and here it says, Reconstruct Military Records Destroyed in NPRC Fire. That's the headline of this section of the VA's website. And it's going to be a little bit reiterated, but kind of bullet pointed here, some of this. So I'm going to go ahead and just read through it. In 1973, a fire at the National Personnel Records Center, NPRC, in St. Louis, Missouri, destroyed the records held for veterans who were discharged from the Army and Air Force during certain periods of time. Find out if your records may have been destroyed in this fire and how to reconstruct your records to support a VA disability compensation claim. Goes on here to say, where were my records destroyed in the 1973 NPRC fire in St. Louis? Question mark. Your records may have been destroyed in the fire if you were discharged from either the Army between November 1st, 1912 and January 1st, 1960. The fire destroyed 80% of the records held for veterans discharged from the Army during this period. The fire didn't involve records for retirees and reservists who were alive on July 12th, 1973. Or if you were in the Air Force between September 25th, 1947 and January 1st, 1964. The fire destroyed 75% of the records held for veterans discharged from the Air Force during this time period, with surnames beginning with Hubbard and running through the end of the alphabet. It says here, reconstructing your records. How does VA reconstruct my records? We, and this again is from the VA's website, so we, the VA, submit a specific request to NPRC for any additional service records they may have or can find for you. With the information we provide, the NPRC searches for documents that may help to reconstruct your records. They may also reach out to other government agencies. For example, they may try to reconstruct portions of your service treatment records by reviewing unit records, morning reports, and hospital admission records from the Surgeon General's office. How can I get the records I need to support my VA disability compensation claim? If you're filing a VA disability compensation claim, follow these steps to get the records you need. Fill out the National Archives Requests for Information form. You'll need to fill out a request for information needed to reconstruct medical data, and that is a NA form 13055. NA form 13055. We'll use this form as our request to the NPRC to reconstruct your file, your records. Please give us as much information as you can about your assignments during your service. Include any of these that apply to you. The unit you were in, the company, the battalion, the regiment, the squadron, the group, the wing, and so on. Number 2, gather or request other records or documents. We will also look at other records or documents called supplemental records to help decide your claim. You can provide these records or ask us to help you find them. Please send us any of these documents that you may have. Statements from service medical personnel, certified buddy statements or affidavits from fellow service members who witnessed your injury or illness, military accident and police reports, examination reports related to employment or insurance, letters or photographs, and we've used this before with people that I worked with in my regular job, letters or photographs from your time in the service. So if you're trying to prove that you served, those come in helpful. Prescription records, photocopies of any service treatment records or medical reports from any private hospital, clinics, or doctors who treated you during service or shortly after separation. Number 3, submit your disability compensation claim along with your NA form 13055 and any supporting documents. You can file your claim online, by mail, in person, or with the help of a trained professional. Your claims involving the reconstruction of records, we encourage you to work with a professional such as an accredited attorney, claims agent, or a veteran service officer. Make sure, and typically if it's your first go, it's go with the veteran service officer. It doesn't cost you anything, right? If you're in the appeal process, that type of stuff, then that's where you would consider working with an attorney or an accredited claims agent. So to move on, make sure that you indicate or include on your NA form 13055 and any supplemental records or other documents that you may have with your claim. Make sure to include your NA form 13055 and any supplemental records or other documents you may have with your claim. Very important. So with that, I hope that this helps. I mean, I know that it's really late in the game, but I know there's still some of us out there, us veterans, right? Not me. I'm obviously too young for that. But I know that there are some vets out there and spouses, survivors, family, dependents, spouses that have hit a brick wall in this arena. And I hope that this may shed some light. I hope that there's some good comments in there that kind of help with this. And, a picture says 1,000 words. If you have a picture of you, somewhere in service, and, you can somehow show that that's you, that helps. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.